It's barely been 5 months since Bayonetta 3, but we're already getting another Bayonetta title from Platinum Games, albeit a spin-off with a completely new concept built around controlling two characters at once. Bayonetta Origins Cereza and the Lost Demon is a prequel set during Cereza's childhood as an Umbran witch in training, where she finds herself lost in the Avalon Forest, a mysterious place infested with dangerous creatures called fairies. Because she has yet to hone her abilities, she equips her demon-possessed doll Cheshire to do most of the fighting for her. Here, players will control both characters to fight enemies and solve puzzles, making for a unique gameplay experience where Cereza is controlled with the left control stick and Cheshire with the right. A creative concept for sure, but is it engaging enough to keep players invested throughout its 12-hour playtime? We'll go over that in our pros and cons review of Bayonetta Origins. Bayonetta Origins has a beautiful, children's storybook-like presentation, seemingly taking inspiration from the likes of Alice in Wonderland and Okami, which, like Bayonetta, is another creation of developer Hideki Kamiya. I'd ask him if this was intentional, but he blocked me along with the rest of Twitter. This gorgeous art is uplifted by a wonderful, dreamlike soundtrack that captures the essence of this mystical, diverse world, with areas like a twisted fairy circus, windy treetops, and peaceful blue waterfalls. Okay, maybe not peaceful, as there's a giant creature called a Jabberwock terrorizing the area, as if Cheshire wasn't already enough of an Alice in Wonderland reference. Still, Bayonetta Origins is a visual feast for the eyes throughout the entire game. Of course, Bayonetta is best known for its combat, so it's no surprise that there's a lot of it in Bayonetta Origins 2, this time split between the two characters. Cheshire is the only one that can attack, while Cereza provides support like pinning down enemies, and she's the only one that can be killed, while Cheshire only reverts back to his doll form for a few seconds if he gets hit too much. Unfortunately, controlling two characters at once can feel overwhelming in combat, as you have to manage them individually while they're both getting attacked by enemies, which is a lot to deal with. It all feels cumbersome, like Platinum's other effort, Star Fox Zero, proving once again that they don't always hit the mark. Since Cereza is controlled with the left stick, her moves are activated with L and ZL, and Cheshire's with the right stick along with R and ZR. While remembering those placements can help, it can get confusing if Cheshire and Cereza are on opposing sides of the screen than the sticks used to control them, and I've had multiple instances where I thought I was controlling one when it was actually the other. Even when I got a hang of things, I found the combat to be only mildly interesting. Though I can appreciate the strategy in coordinating the movements of two characters, it leaves things open for more frustrating incidents, like when an enemy is briefly open to a special move from Cereza, only she was facing the wrong way the whole time and I just realized it when it was too late. Theoretically, you can make this a co-op experience by holding one Joy-Con while a friend holds another, but given that the game is intended to be a single-player experience, this may not go as well as intended, since the goal is for one person to be in sync with both characters. At the very least, combat does improve after unlocking more elemental powers and skill tree abilities, and the only way to get them is by searching the Avalon Forest, which is entirely explorable front to back with interconnected pathways. While you can find plenty of items in the forest like potion ingredients, the most valuable ones are those that upgrade the duo's skills, Cereza using Onyx Roses and Moon Pearls, while Cheshire uses Avalon Drops and Inferno Fruits. These are the big incentives to explore the forest outside the main story path laid out by blue wolf print tracks, and you can find them by completing secret combat encounters, rescuing wisps, beating challenge rooms called Tier Nanogs, and simply looking inside treasure chests.
Cool!
Because this currency unlocks more powers, it makes exploration quite rewarding. These abilities, found in their separate skill trees, include the likes of Cereza pinning down 2 enemies instead of 1, and giving Cheshire a brutal finisher move. So it's definitely worth taking some time to revisit areas that haven't been fully explored in order to bring the duo to their maximum potential. Although you're unable to explore the entire forest from the beginning, as some of the paths are obstructed without an elemental power from Cheshire, of which there are 4. He can use his rock form to break down stone blockades, and his water form to swim and move giant lily pads. It's sort of like a Metroidvania, and as a huge fan of that genre, I approve of its usage in Bayonetta Origins. Getting items that unlock new areas will always feel rewarding, and it's no exception here. Plus, the game has fast travel, so you won't be restricted to just walking everywhere when exploring. Cheshire's elemental abilities aren't just good for unlocking new areas though, as they're also quite useful in combat and puzzle solving. The dual character element is at its best when it comes to puzzles. While Cheshire can morph into a small doll that Cereza can carry, Bayonetta Origins shines during the times when the duo are separated. They start out becoming simple traversal puzzles, but as Cheshire collects elemental power orbs like wood and rock, his new abilities shake them up further, like with a grapple vine that makes bridges, moving platforms, and at one point creates a catapult for Cereza. My favorite puzzles are in the tier Nanogs, where the duo are on separate platforms and have to activate switches on their side that'll open gates on the other. It's like two-player co-op, only it's just you and your two thumbs. While I was occasionally flustered due to time pressure, I never felt these puzzles were too complicated. Instead, they were reasonable challenges that tested my coordination with those control sticks. I would have loved if most of Bayonetta Origins consisted of these wonderfully creative puzzles, but unfortunately, there's only a handful of them. And I desired way more than the few that were sprinkled throughout the entire game. They feel even less plentiful when compared to the amount of combat encounters which pop up constantly. Heck, even most of the tier Nanogs are combat-based instead of puzzle-focused. To put it bluntly, the first half of Bayonetta Origins is rather mixed. While the concept of controlling two characters was intriguing at first thanks to the handful of puzzles that utilize it well, I grew tired of the constant battles it threw me into, which mostly consisted of pressing ZR dozens of times until I won. I found myself mainly sticking to the story path since most of the forest was closed off to me until I gathered more elemental powers. I wasn't driven to continue playing up until the halfway point, where I gathered more skills and elemental powers that made combat a bit more interesting. Plus, fast travel unlocked during this point, and I got to explore way more of the Avalon Forest at a quicker pace, letting me gather more items that increased my health and fighting prowess. I was shocked how different the latter half of the game felt compared to the front half, and even if it doesn't completely erase my issues with the combat and lack of meaningful puzzles, I actually became invested in seeing where the story was headed and how it was going to end. Even though it's presented in a charming way with a storybook narrator and superb voice acting, the first 6 hours are mostly spent setting things up, telling us about Cereza and how she was beckoned into the Avalon Forest by a mysterious figure, as well as how she summoned Cheshire into her cat doll by accident. There's not much in the way of character development until the second half of the story, where we see the duo's relationship challenged, causing Cereza to undergo serious character growth that's both fascinating and heartbreaking to watch. This is also where the plot takes a couple of dramatic twists and turns that are shocking and help make for a satisfyingly emotional conclusion. Though I wouldn't say anything about this prequel adds additional context to the mainline games, it still provides a great story that helps us appreciate Bayonetta as a character. After all, we normally see her as a confident grown woman, so to see how she fully evolves into that is a real treat. Which is why it's beneficial to play the other Bayonetta games before this one. It's not required, but it greatly enhances the experience.
Not bad, huh? Told you I'm good for more than just carrying you around.
Now, if I had to measure my enjoyment of this game in a chart, it would look something like this. So, despite the first half being a bit uneven, I came away liking Bayonetta Origins, Cereza, and the Lost Demon. The concept of controlling two characters at once has a lot of potential that is occasionally realized here in some well thought out puzzles, but is let down by combat that can often be too chaotic and frustrating. I would have preferred if the devs capitalized more so on the puzzle-solving aspects while bringing down the number of combat encounters, or possibly creating a separate control method for these fights that's less confusing. Thankfully, the experience is improved with a large interconnected world with plenty to do and see, along with a story that reaches a satisfying conclusion. I'm glad Platinum Games created this adorably quirky Bayonetta spin-off. I just wish they expanded more on what it does right, instead of focusing on messy combat.